Imagine standing in your own home during your baby shower when you notice something strange. Your pregnant wife has disappeared. Her 12-year-old brother is missing too. You go upstairs. You hear crying. You open a door. And what you see in the next 5 seconds will haunt you forever. What would you do if the person you trusted most was hiding the unthinkable? Hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to tell you is one of the most disturbing cases I've ever covered. And drop a comment. Have you ever discovered something that shattered your trust in someone? She was 33, 7 months pregnant, and everyone called her an angel. 3 years ago, when her father went to prison for embezzlement and her mother vanished, she'd taken in her 12-year-old brother without hesitation. The neighbors praised her. Her husband, we'll call him David, had fallen deeper in love watching her care for the boy. We'll call him Jay. It looked like the perfect family. But David had started noticing things. His wife had pulled Jay out of school after 6 months, claiming severe bullying. David had never seen evidence. No bruises, no torn clothes, no mean messages. But she insisted it was happening, so she started homeschooling him, which meant they were together. All day. Every day. Alone. She'd changed pediatricians 3 times in 2 years. Each time with an excuse. He doesn't understand Jay's special needs. She asks too many questions. They don't respect our boundaries. And Jay had changed. He'd been outgoing at first, eager to make friends. Now he was withdrawn, quiet, barely speaking to David. Just one-word answers and avoiding eye contact. His wife explained it away. He's hitting puberty. Boys get awkward. He'll grow out of it. 2 weeks before the baby shower, David came home early. He heard voices from Jay's bedroom, his wife's voice low and soothing. He knocked. Long pause. Too long. His wife opened the door, smile bright, eyes guarded. Just helping him with personal stuff. Boy things. Jay didn't come out of his room the rest of that evening. The next morning he couldn't look David in the eye. But David had been too blind to see them. The baby shower filled their house with laughter that Saturday. Pink and blue balloons. Friends from book club. David's colleagues. Everyone celebrating. His wife moved through the crowd in a white dress, hand on her belly, accepting congratulations. She looked radiant. Perfect. David stood across the room watching when that cold feeling hit his gut. Have you seen my wife? Or Jay? He asked his colleague. Not recently. Kitchen maybe? They weren't in the kitchen. Not in the backyard. Not anywhere. Gone. Both of them. Together. David's mother appeared. I saw them go upstairs about 20 minutes ago. She said Jay wasn't feeling well. 20 minutes. What would you do? Would you go check? Or tell yourself you're being paranoid? Drop your answer in the comments. And subscribe now, because what happens next will shock you. David moved toward the stairs, heart hammering. The party noise faded as he reached the 2nd floor. Jay's bedroom door was closed. He heard something. A whimper. Crying. Jay's voice frightened. I don't want to. Then his wife's voice, barely a whisper. Sure, it's okay. This is what love looks like. This is our secret. Our special bond. Special bond. David's hand gripped the doorknob. The door swung open. His brain couldn't process what he was seeing. His wife sat on Jay's bed. Jay's shirt was... something wasn't right. The positioning. The way Jay's hands trembled. His wife turned, her face cycling through surprise, fear, then something cold and calculating. David, she said calmly. You startled us. Jay was crying silently, body rigid and trembling. But he looked guilty. Not relieved. Guilty. What's going on? David's voice came out strangled. His wife stood, placing herself between them. Jay had a panic attack. I was helping with breathing exercises. You know how anxious he gets. It sounded reasonable. Plausible. But David's eyes had seen something else. Jay, David said, looking past her. Are you okay? The boy's mouth opened. Close. His eyes darted to his sister, then David, then the floor. I'm fine, he whispered. But his voice cracked and it sounded like a practiced lie. See. His wife smiled. He's fine. Just overwhelmed. Let's go back. No. Jay, look at me. David, you're scaring him. Look at me, Jay. The boy raised his head. Terror. Shame. Resignation. And underneath, a plea David couldn't read. Help me or don't do this. Jay, go to the bathroom. Now. The boy ran. The bathroom door slammed. David and his wife faced each other in silence. What were you doing? David asked quietly. I told you. Breathing exercises. Don't lie to me. Her expression hardened. You're being paranoid. You're imagining things. Am I? Then why does Jay look terrified? Why won't he look at me? Why have you isolated him from everyone? What the hell is going on? His wife stared at him. Then slowly she smiled. Cold. Predatory. You have no idea what you're about to destroy, she said softly. What does that mean? It means if you say anything you'll tear this family apart. Our child will be born into scandal. Jay will be thrown into foster care. Everyone will think you're crazy. She moved toward him. Is that what you want? Are you threatening me? I'm protecting our family. Jay needs stability. He needs me. And you're about to ruin everything because of some paranoid fantasy. This isn't a fantasy. Isn't it? She tilted her head. What exactly did you see? I was sitting on a bed, fully clothed, comforting my brother. That's all. Everything else is in your head. David understood then. She'd been so careful. Always plausible deniability. Always an explanation. Always a way to make him seem crazy. I'm calling the police. Her eyes narrowed. And telling them what? That you walked in on something innocent and twisted it? Jay was having a panic attack, which I explained. You burst in and startled him. That's the truth. He was crying? From the panic attack. He looked terrified. Because you burst in. David's head spun. Was he crazy? But no, he knew what he'd felt in that room. The wrongness. The guilt in Jay's eyes. I need to talk to Jay. Alone. Absolutely not. You don't get to decide that. I'm his legal guardian. And I'm checking on him. Now. Her expression turned icy. You do this, I leave. Tonight. I take our baby and you never see us again. Is that what you want? David stood frozen, her ultimatum hanging in the air. Downstairs, laughter. Toast. Normal sounds. He looked at this woman carrying his child, standing between him and the truth. Walk away and preserve the peace? Or step forward and save a child who might not want saving? His wife's eyes were cold, confident. She thought she'd won. She was wrong. David pulled out his phone. What are you doing? Her voice went sharp. What I should have done weeks ago. He started dialing 911. She lunged for the phone. They struggled, both breathing hard, both knowing this was the point of no return. The phone clattered to the floor. And from the bathroom down the hall they heard a window sliding open. Footsteps on the roof. Jay was running. Where is Jay going? Why did he run? And what exactly was happening in that bedroom? Jay just climbed out a bathroom window and ran across the roof while his sister and brother-in-law fought over calling 911. A 12-year-old boy so terrified of being discovered that he'd rather risk breaking his neck than face what comes next. But here's what nobody expected. Jay wasn't running away from his abuser. He was running to protect her. What happens in the next hour will reveal a manipulation so twisted, it'll make you sick. And don't forget to like this video if you want more true crime content that goes deep. Drop a comment right now telling me, have you ever witnessed someone protect the person hurting them? Let's talk about it. And hit subscribe. This investigation is about to get dark. David and his wife raced into the hallway just in time to see the bathroom window wide open, curtains billowing in the evening breeze. Jay, his wife screamed, running to the window. Jay, come back. David grabbed her arm. Don't. He's terrified. Because of you. She whirled on him, tears streaming down her face. Real tears or performance? David couldn't tell anymore. You scared him. He thinks you're going to send me away. Downstairs, the party had gone quiet. Footsteps on the stairs. David's mother appeared, face pale. What's happening? We heard shouting. Call 911, David said, his voice hollow. Tell them we need police. And tell them a child just ran from the house. His wife let out a sound between a sob and a scream. No. David, please. You're destroying everything. He's just scared he'll come back. We can handle this as a family. This stops now. David's mother stood frozen, phone in hand, looking between them. David, what's going on? Mom, please, call them. His wife sank to the floor, hands cradling her pregnant belly, sobbing. You're killing us. All of us. Can't you see that? David's mother made the call, voice shaking. Within minutes, the house transformed from celebration to crime scene. Guests were ushered out, confused, whispering, pulling out phones to text their own theories about what was happening. 2 patrol cars arrived first. Then a third. Officers separated David and his wife immediately, her to the living room, him to the bedroom. Through the walls he could hear her voice, smooth even through tears. My husband has been under tremendous stress with the baby coming. I think he's having some kind of breakdown. I was comforting my brother through a panic attack, and David misinterpreted what he saw. Now Jay's run off terrified and I'm worried sick. She was good. So good. An officer came to take David's statement. Younger guy, late 20s, notepad ready. Mr. Mitchell, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. From the beginning. David talked. About the closed door. The crying. The words his wife had said, "This is our secret. Our special bond." The way Jay had looked, guilty, terrified, trapped. The way his shirt had been disheveled. The officer's expression remained neutral, but his pen moved faster. And where is the boy now? He climbed out the bathroom window. Onto the roof. I don't know where he went after that. We have units searching the neighborhood. The officer paused. Mr. Mitchell, what you're alleging is serious. Are you certain about what you saw? I know what I heard. I know what I felt in that room. More police arrived. A detective, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes that had seen too much. She introduced herself simply as Detective Morrison and sat across from David with an intensity that made him feel like she could see straight through him. Your wife says you've been stressed about the pregnancy. Having mood swings. Is that true? No. I mean, yes, I'm stressed, but has she given you any reason before today to suspect inappropriate behavior with her brother? David thought about all those red flags he'd ignored. She's isolated him. Changed his doctors multiple times. Pulled him from school. He went from outgoing to withdrawn in 2 years. He can't look me in the eye anymore. Morrison made notes. Did you ever witness any inappropriate physical contact? No. But she was always very affectionate with him. Long hugs. Insisting he sleep in her room when he had nightmares. She said it was because of his trauma. And you believed her? David's throat tightened. She made it sound reasonable. Like she was being a good guardian. That's what they do, Morrison said quietly. They make abuse look like love. A commotion downstairs. Voices. David's heart leaped. Had they found Jay? Morrison stood. Wait here. Through the window, David watched officers searching the dark neighborhood with flashlights, calling Jay's name. But the boy had vanished into the night like smoke. 20 minutes later, Morrison returned. Her expression had changed, harder, more certain. We found Jay, she said. He's okay. Physically at least. Relief flooded through David. Where was he? That's the interesting part. He was hiding in your neighbor's shed. And when we found him, do you know what he said? David shook his head. He said, please don't arrest her. She didn't do anything wrong. This is my fault. I'm the one who's bad. Wait, did you catch that? A 12-year-old boy is blaming himself. That's textbook grooming behavior. If this is making your blood boil, hit that like button and drop a comment. What would you do if you were the officer hearing this? Subscribe because Chapter 3 reveals what Jay tells the police, and it's absolutely devastating. The words hit David like a physical blow. He thinks it's his fault? That's what grooming does, Morrison explained. The abuser convinces the victim that they're complicit, that they wanted it, that they're to blame. It's how they maintain control and silence. Where is he now? In a patrol car with a social worker. He's refusing to come inside. Crying, saying he doesn't want to get anyone in trouble. David ran his hands through his hair. What happens now? Now we interview him properly, separately from your wife. And based on what he says, we'll determine if there's enough evidence to make an arrest. He'll protect her, David said with certainty. Whatever she's done to him, he'll lie to protect her. Morrison's expression softened slightly. Maybe. But I've been doing this for 23 years, Mr. Mitchell. I know how to talk to traumatized kids. And I know the signs of abuse, even when the victim denies it. She left. David sat alone in his bedroom, listening to the chaos of his destroyed life happening in real time. His phone buzzed, dozens of texts from confused guests, from his mother, from his wife's friends demanding to know what was happening. He ignored them all. An hour passed. Then 2. David heard his wife's voice rising and falling downstairs, sometimes crying, sometimes sharp with indignation, always convincing. Finally, Morrison returned. Her face was grim. Your wife is being taken into custody, she said quietly. We're arresting her on suspicion of child sexual abuse. Jay will be placed in emergency foster care pending investigation. The room tilted. What did he say? Enough. Morrison pulled out a chair, sat down heavily. He didn't want to tell us. Kept insisting nothing happened, that you'd misunderstood. But there are ways to interview children, gentle ways, that help the truth come out. What truth? Morrison looked at him for a long moment. Your wife has been grooming Jay for at least 18 months. Maybe longer. She convinced him their relationship was special, that physical intimacy was how families show love, that other people wouldn't understand. She told him if anyone found out, they'd be separated forever and it would be his fault for not keeping their secret. David felt bile rise in his throat. How far did it go? I can't share specifics. But it was ongoing. Systematic. And your wife knew exactly what she was doing. Downstairs, David heard his wife's voice rise to a scream. This is insane. I've done nothing wrong. David is having a mental breakdown and you're believing his delusions. I'm 7 months pregnant, for God's sake. Does this look like something a monster would do? She was still fighting. Still manipulating. Still trying to control the narrative. There's something else you need to know, Morrison said. We're investigating your wife's background. Her father isn't just in prison for embezzlement. David looked up sharply. What? There were allegations. Years ago, before the embezzlement charges. Allegations involving your wife when she was a minor. No charges were filed, victim recanted. But the pattern? Morrison trailed off. Sometimes victims become perpetrators. It's called the cycle of abuse. The words hung in the air like poison. You're saying she was abused? And now she's repeating it with her brother. Yes. Morrison stood. I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell. I know this isn't the family you thought you had. They arrested his wife at 9:47 p.m. David watched from the bedroom window as they led her to the patrol car, pregnant, belly prominent, wrists cuffed behind her back. She was crying, pleading, telling them they were making a terrible mistake. She looked up at the house. Straight at the window where David stood. Her mouth moved. I love you. David closed the blinds. After everyone left, David sat alone in the dark living room surrounded by baby shower debris, torn wrapping paper, half-eaten cake, a banner that read Welcome Baby Mitchell in cheerful letters. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. David? A woman's voice. Older. Strained. This is Margaret. I'm calling about my daughter. David's blood went cold. His wife's mother. The woman who'd vanished 3 years ago. Where are you? He managed. That doesn't matter. What matters is what I need to tell you. About what happened to her when she was Jay's age. About what her father did. About what I knew and did nothing to stop. Pause. Then. My daughter wasn't born a monster, David. She was made into one. And I'm the one who let it happen. The line went dead. David sat in the darkness, his destroyed life scattered around him, his wife's mother's words echoing in his head. And realized this nightmare was just beginning. The mother just dropped a bombshell. What did the father do? What did she know? And how does this explain what happened to Jay? The next chapter of this story digs into the family's dark history, and what we uncover will change everything you thought you knew about this case. Comment now. Do you think understanding her past makes her actions more or less forgivable? And subscribe, because the courtroom testimony in the will absolutely wreck you. David just received a phone call from a ghost. His wife's mother, the woman who vanished 3 years ago, just told him his wife wasn't born a monster. She was made into one. And the mother knew about it. Did nothing. Let it happen. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The father sitting in prison? His embezzlement conviction wasn't his real crime. Before we dive in, comment below. Can childhood trauma ever excuse someone becoming an abuser themselves? This is the question at the heart of this entire case. And subscribe, because the next chapter of this story reveals the courtroom testimony that broke everyone who heard it. David called the number back immediately. Rang. And rang. And rang. No answer. He tried again. Straight to voicemail. A generic automated voice, no personal message. His hands shook as he set the phone down. His wife's mother, Margaret, had been missing for 3 years. She'd left the night her husband was arrested, disappeared without a word to anyone. The family assumed she'd run from the shame, couldn't handle the scandal. But what if she'd been running from something else entirely? David pulled out his laptop, searching for information he'd never thought to look for before. Articles about his father-in-law's arrest, business fraud, embezzlement, a respected financial advisor who'd stolen millions from clients. That was the official story. But now David scrolled deeper, adding different search terms. His father-in-law's name plus allegations, plus charges dropped, plus victim. And there it was, buried 6 pages deep in search results. A local news article from 12 years ago. Brief, almost dismissing. Local businessman cleared of abuse allegations. The article was vague, carefully worded to avoid libel. An unnamed minor had accused the businessman of inappropriate conduct. Investigation launched. Victim recanted statement. No charges filed. Case closed. The timeline matched. 12 years ago, his wife would have been 21. Jay would have been an infant. But there had been another child in that house. A girl. His wife. David's stomach turned as he realized what he was reading. The unnamed minor hadn't been some random victim. It had been his own daughter. She tried to tell. And somehow she'd been silenced. His phone rang. Unknown number. Different from before. Hello? Mr. Mitchell? A man's voice. Official. This is Detective Morrison. I'm calling because we've had a development in the case. David's heart hammered. What kind of development? Margaret Foster, your wife's mother, just walked into our station 30 minutes ago. She's requesting to speak with us about her daughter's childhood. I think you should come down here. The police station was fluorescent bright and smelled like burnt coffee. Detective Morrison met David in the lobby, her expression grave. She's been waiting for this moment for 3 years, Morrison said as they walked down a corridor. She's been following the news. When she heard about the arrest, she said she couldn't stay silent anymore. Where has she been? Living under a different name 2 states away. Working as a waitress. Drinking too much. Trying to forget what she'd allowed to happen in her own home. They reached an interview room. Through the one-way glass, David saw a woman who looked decades older than 58. Gray hair, hollow cheeks, hands trembling around a styrofoam cup of coffee. You can observe, Morrison said. But she doesn't want to see you yet. Says she's too ashamed. David nodded, unable to speak. Morrison entered the interview room. Sat across from Margaret. Pressed record on the camera mounted in the corner. Mrs. Foster, you're here voluntarily, correct? Yes. Margaret's voice was hoarse, like she'd been screaming or crying. Or both. And you want to tell us about your daughter's childhood. Margaret closed her eyes. I want to tell you about the monster I married. And the monster I let him create. For the next hour, David listened to a confession that made him physically ill. Margaret described a marriage that looked perfect from outside. Her husband was successful, charming, respected in the community. They lived in a beautiful house. Took nice vacations. Went to church every Sunday. Behind closed doors he was different. It started when she was 11, Margaret said, staring at her hands. I noticed changes. She became withdrawn. Started having nightmares. Her grades dropped. I asked what was wrong and she said nothing. Just stress from school. But you suspected something else, Morrison prompted gently. I didn't want to suspect. Suspecting meant acknowledging. Acknowledging meant acting. And acting meant destroying everything, our marriage, our reputation, our financial security. Margaret's voice cracked. So I told myself I was imagining things. That I was being paranoid. That my husband would never. When did you know for certain? When she was 14. I came home early one day. Heard sounds from her bedroom. I stood outside the door for 10 minutes, frozen, knowing what I'd find if I opened it. And then I walked away. I walked away and went to the store and bought groceries like nothing was wrong. David felt bile rise in his throat. This woman had known. Had heard her daughter being abused and done nothing. The abuse continued? Morrison asked. Until she was 15. Then she fought back. Threatened to go to the police, to tell her teachers, to scream it from the rooftops. So he stopped. Just stopped. Like turning off a switch. Went back to being the perfect father. Distant but appropriate. And you still did nothing. I convinced myself it was over. That we could move past it. That bringing it up would just traumatize her more. Margaret looked up, eyes red. I was protecting myself. Not her. Myself. This is why abuse continues generation after generation, because adults choose comfort over courage. If this story is making you angry, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me, what would you have done in Margaret's position? And don't forget to subscribe. The next revelation is even worse. Morrison leaned forward. Mrs. Foster, 6 years later, your daughter made a formal allegation against your husband. What happened? Margaret's face crumpled. He convinced her to recant. Said if she didn't, he'd go to prison and I'd lose everything, the house, the lifestyle, the social standing. He made it about me. About protecting me. And she believed him? She loved me. Despite everything I'd failed to do, she still loved me. So she took back her statement. Said she'd been confused, had misremembered, had exaggerated normal father-daughter affection. The case was closed. Yes. And we all pretended it never happened. Went back to playing happy family. Your husband went back to work. I went back to my book club. And my daughter. Margaret's voice broke. My daughter started changing in different ways. Morrison waited. She became obsessed with younger children. Volunteered at the elementary school. Babysat constantly. I thought she was just maternal. But looking back, I see the pattern. The way she'd fixate on one child at a time. Get too close. Too affectionate. Boundary violations. David gripped the edge of his chair. This had been happening for years. Long before Jay came into the picture. Did you intervene? I suggested therapy once. She refused. Said I was being paranoid, reading too much into normal behavior. Margaret laughed bitterly. The same words I'd used to silence my own suspicions about her father. She'd learned well. When did Jay come to live with your daughter? 3 years ago. After my husband was arrested for embezzlement, which was real, by the way. He really did steal millions. Got too arrogant, thought he was untouchable. Margaret's hands clenched around the cup. I couldn't stay. Couldn't watch her with that boy. Couldn't watch her become him. So you ran. I ran. And I've been running ever since. Until I heard about the arrest. Margaret looked directly at the camera as if she could see David watching. I need you to understand something. My daughter is a victim and a perpetrator. Both things are true. What happened to her doesn't excuse what she's done, but it explains it. Morrison pulled out a folder. We need to ask you about specific incidents. Are you willing to testify about what you witnessed in your home? Yes. All of it. I'm done protecting monsters. Even if one of them is my daughter. For the next 30 minutes, Margaret described a household built on silence and shame. She detailed her husband's grooming tactics, the same ones her daughter would later use on Jay. The gradual boundary violations. The normalization of inappropriate touch. The secrecy framed as special bonding. He used to tell her that other people wouldn't understand their love, Margaret said. That he was teaching her things she needed to know. That this was how fathers showed daughters they were special. David's blood ran cold. Those were nearly identical to the words he'd heard through Jay's bedroom door. And now your daughter has used the same language with her brother. Yes. The cycle repeated itself perfectly. She became him. Morrison made notes. Mrs. Foster, do you believe your daughter is capable of change? Of rehabilitation? Margaret was quiet for a long moment. I want to believe everyone can change. But I've spent 3 years thinking about this. About why I stayed silent, why she repeated the abuse, why evil perpetuates itself. And I think. She swallowed hard. I think some damage goes so deep, it becomes who you are. My daughter isn't pretending to believe her actions were loving. She genuinely believes it. Just like her father did. That's what makes her dangerous. Yes. Morrison ended the interview. Came out to find David standing against the wall, pale and shaking. You heard everything, Morrison said. It wasn't a question. She knew. For years, she knew what was happening and did nothing. Yes. And that failure allowed your wife to become what she is. Morrison paused. This is important context for the trial. It doesn't excuse your wife's actions, but it helps explain them. And it gives us leverage. What kind of leverage? Your wife thinks she was showing love because that's what her father taught her. But Margaret's testimony proves she knew what happened to her was wrong. She tried to report it. Which means she knows the difference between love and abuse. She's not delusional. She's not mentally ill. She made a conscious choice to inflict the same pain on her brother. David's phone buzzed. His lawyer. He'd retained one that morning, knowing he'd need help navigating custody of a baby born to an incarcerated mother. The text read, "Emergency hearing scheduled for tomorrow. Judge wants to determine custody before the baby is born. You need to be there." David looked up at Morrison. "What happens to Jay now?" "He's in emergency foster care. Therapy starting tomorrow. It'll be a long road." "Can I see him?" Morrison's expression softened. "He's refusing visitors. He's still protecting her, David. Still believes he's the one who did something wrong. That's what trauma does." David nodded, throat tight. "And the baby? That's tomorrow's problem. But I'll tell you this, document everything. Fight for custody. Because your wife is going to prison for a very long time." After Morrison left, David sat alone in the hallway, his wife's mother's words echoing in his head. "My daughter wasn't born a monster. She was made into one. But being made into a monster doesn't unmake the victims you create. And Jay would carry those scars forever." Tomorrow, David faces a judge who will decide the fate of his unborn daughter. His wife's attorney is arguing she should keep custody even from prison. And wait until you hear the argument they make, it'll make your blood boil. Comment now, should a convicted abuser ever maintain parental rights? I would love to hear your thoughts. David's wife is sitting in a cell, 7 months pregnant with a baby she might never hold. Her mother just testified that she was abused as a child, then became an abuser herself. Now a judge has to decide, does that baby go to David or does it stay with a woman awaiting trial for child sexual abuse? But here's the bombshell nobody expected. Her defense attorney has an argument so twisted, it just might work. Drop a comment right now. If you were the judge, what would you decide? And subscribe, because the testimony in this chapter will absolutely wreck you emotionally. David sat in the courthouse waiting room at 8:45 a.m., his lawyer beside him reviewing documents. Attorney Rebecca Walsh was in her 40s, sharp-eyed, with a reputation for winning impossible custody cases. "They're going to argue trauma," Walsh said without looking up. "That your wife was a victim herself, that she needs psychological help, not punishment. That separating her from her baby would cause irreparable harm to both mother and child. She's awaiting trial for abusing her brother. Allegedly abusing. She hasn't been convicted yet." Walsh finally looked at him. "In family court, they don't need a criminal conviction to remove parental rights, but they need compelling evidence. The judge will weigh her rights as a mother against the child's safety. How is this even a question? Because the law is complicated. And because her attorney is Robert Chin, he's very good at making monsters look sympathetic." The courtroom doors opened. A bailiff called them in. Judge Patricia Summers presided, 60-something, gray hair pulled back severely, reading glasses perched on her nose. She had the look of someone who'd seen every type of human failure and remained unimpressed by all of it. David's wife was brought in wearing prison orange, belly prominent, wrists cuffed. She looked pale, exhausted, vulnerable. Her eyes found David's across the courtroom and he saw her mouth form words, "I'm sorry." He looked away. Judge Summers called the hearing to order. "We're here to determine temporary custody of the unborn child, baby Mitchell, currently in utero. Mr. Mitchell is requesting full custody upon birth. The mother is requesting custody be maintained with her pending trial outcome." Chin stood. "Your Honor, my client is 7 months pregnant and incarcerated based on allegations that have not been proven. She has no prior criminal record. She's been a devoted guardian to her brother for 3 years, and every witness prior to this incident described her as loving, maternal, and responsible." Walsh stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Mitchell witnessed his wife in a compromising situation with her 12-year-old brother. The child's subsequent interview with trained specialists revealed 18 months of systematic grooming and abuse. This woman is a danger to children, including her own unborn child." "Alleged abuse?" Chin interjected. "Based on the testimony of a traumatized child who may have been coached or confused by aggressive questioning." Judge Summers held up a hand. "I've read the preliminary reports. Let's hear testimony. Mr. Mitchell, you're first." Cliffhanger number 1. David took the stand, his hands sweating. Walsh guided him through the events of the baby shower, what he'd heard, what he'd seen, what he'd felt in that room. "Describe your wife's exact words," Walsh said. "She said, 'This is what love looks like. This is our secret. Our special bond.'" David's voice cracked. And when I opened the door, Jay looked terrified. Not of me. Of being discovered. What happened after you confronted your wife? She threatened me. Said if I called the police, she'd leave and take the baby. That I'd never see either of them again. She tried to convince me I was crazy, that I'd misunderstood everything. Chin stood for cross-examination. His approach was gentler than expected. Mr. Mitchell, you've been under considerable stress preparing for fatherhood, correct? Yes, but... And you've had concerns about your ability to be a good father, haven't you? You've expressed anxiety about it to friends. David paused. He had expressed those concerns. That's normal for first-time fathers. Is it also normal to have paranoid thoughts? To see threats where none exist? I'm not paranoid. But you've been suspicious of your wife for months, haven't you? Looking for problems in her relationship with her brother. Maybe even wanting to find something wrong because you were jealous of their bond. That's not. Your wife gave up her own life to raise her brother after family tragedy. She homeschooled him, cared for him, protected him. And you resented that attention, didn't you? Walsh objected. Speculation, Your Honor. Sustained. Move on, Mr. Chin. But the damage was done. Chin had planted doubt. Was David a concerned husband or a jealous one seeing shadows where none existed? See how abusers manipulate the system? They make you look crazy for noticing their crimes. If this is infuriating you, hit that like button. Comment below. Have you ever been gaslit by someone everyone else thought was perfect? And subscribe. The next witness will change everything. Detective Morrison took the stand next. Walsh walked her through the investigation. Jay's initial interview, the evidence collected, the patterns consistent with grooming. In your professional opinion, detective, was this an isolated incident or part of a pattern? Absolutely a pattern. The victim described escalating boundary violations over 18 months. Classic grooming behavior, starting with inappropriate discussions about development, progressing to physical contact framed as education or comfort, and ultimately to sexual abuse. And the victim's emotional state? He's experiencing severe trauma. He believes he's responsible for what happened. He's protecting his abuser. These are textbook signs of long-term manipulation. Chin stood. Detective, isn't it true that the victim initially denied any abuse occurred? Yes. That's common in these cases. Isn't it also true that child testimony is notoriously unreliable? That children can be influenced by leading questions. Our interviewers are trained to avoid leading questions. But mistakes happen. Children want to please authority figures. They might say what they think you want to hear. Morrison's jaw tightened. I've been doing this for 23 years. I know the difference between a coached statement and genuine disclosure. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, a child said nothing happened until you kept pushing. That's not. No further questions. Judge Summers called a recess. David stood in the hallway, head spinning. Chin was good. He was making it seem like the investigation itself had created the abuse narrative. Walsh put a hand on his arm. Don't worry. We have one more witness. And she's going to seal this. Who? Margaret Foster. Your wife's mother. After the recess, Margaret took the stand. She looked even worse than she had at the police station, like she hadn't slept in days. But her voice was steady. Walsh approached carefully. Mrs. Foster, you're here to testify against your own daughter. Why? Because I failed her once. I won't fail another child. Tell us about your daughter's childhood. Margaret did. She described her husband's abuse in clinical detail. The grooming, the manipulation, the sexual assault that lasted from age 11 to 15. The courtroom went silent. And you knew this was happening? Yes. Margaret's voice broke. I knew and did nothing. I chose silence over protecting my daughter. And that silence created what she became. What do you mean? My daughter learned that abuse could be disguised as love. That secrecy was normal. That victims don't fight back, they accept and rationalize. She learned these lessons so well that she's now teaching them to her brother. Chin stood slowly. Mrs. Foster, you admit you're a coward who failed to protect your own child. Why should we believe anything you say now? Margaret looked at him steadily. Because I'm done lying. Done protecting. Done pretending. You abandoned your daughter 3 years ago. Left her to raise a traumatized boy alone. Isn't it possible that your abandonment contributed to whatever happened in that house? Yes. My abandonment contributed. My husband's abuse contributed. But at the end of the day, my daughter made a choice. She knew what happened to her was wrong, she tried to report it. She knows the difference between love and abuse. And she chose abuse anyway. Or maybe she's so damaged she genuinely can't tell the difference. Then she shouldn't have custody of an infant. The courtroom erupted. Judge Summers banged her gavel. Chin pressed on. You want us to take a baby from its mother based on allegations. Before trial. Before conviction. You want to punish your daughter for being a victim herself. I want to protect a child who can't protect itself. Something I failed to do before. Chin sat down and David saw something flicker across his face. Not victory. Not defeat. Calculation. Judge Summers called the final witness. Dr. Lisa Park, a forensic psychologist who'd evaluated both David's wife and Jay. Dr. Park, you've assessed the mother. Is she a danger to her unborn child? Dr. Park adjusted her glasses. That's complicated. The mother shows signs of complex PTSD from her own childhood abuse. She's developed distorted beliefs about appropriate family bonding. However, her victim was pubescent, specifically chosen because he resembled her at the age her own abuse began. An infant wouldn't trigger the same compulsions. David's stomach dropped. Was she saying his wife wasn't a danger to the baby? Walsh stood quickly. Dr. Park, is it possible those compulsions could develop as the child ages? Absolutely. If the mother's untreated trauma includes sexual fixation on specific developmental stages, the risk increases dramatically as the child approaches that age. So the infant is safe now but potentially at risk later? Yes. And there's another concern. Mothers with this profile sometimes view their children as extensions of themselves. If the mother sees the child as a second chance to correct her own traumatic past, that creates a dangerous dynamic. Judge Summers leaned forward. Bottom line, doctor. Yes or no, should this woman have custody of a newborn? Dr. Park was quiet for a long moment. In my professional opinion? No. The risk is too significant. Chin objected. Your Honor, this is speculation. Overruled. I've heard enough. Judge Summers removed her glasses. Temporary custody is awarded to the father, David Mitchell, effective immediately upon birth. The mother may request supervised visitation pending trial outcome, but primary custody remains with Mr. Mitchell. We're adjourned. The gavel fell. David's wife let out a sound between a sob and a scream. Officers had to restrain her as she tried to reach David across the courtroom. You're taking my baby. You're stealing my baby. Her voice rose to a shriek. I'm her mother. She needs me. David, please. Please. But David walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Because he'd finally learned, some bonds need to be broken. Even between mother and child. David won custody, but at what cost? His wife's trial is coming, and her defense team is building an insanity plea that might actually work. The trial, the verdict, and the aftermath will haunt everyone involved forever. Comment now. Do you think she should go to prison or psychiatric treatment? This is the debate that tore the courtroom apart. David won custody of his unborn daughter. His wife screamed that he was stealing her baby as officers dragged her from the courtroom. But 3 weeks later, everything changed when she went into premature labor in her cell, and the first person she asked for was David. Here's what nobody saw coming. The baby would be born before the trial ended. And the choice David makes in that hospital room will haunt him forever. Before we finish this, drop a comment. Can a mother's love exist alongside her capacity for evil? That's the impossible question this case forces us to answer. And subscribe, because I cover cases like this that make you question everything you thought you knew about human nature. The call came at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. David was awake. He was always awake now, sleep having become something that happened to other people. His phone lit up the darkness. County General Hospital. Mr. Mitchell? Your wife has gone into labor. The baby's coming. Premature by 3 weeks. But ready or not, his daughter was entering this broken world. David sat in his car outside the hospital for 20 minutes, unable to make himself go inside. Inside that building, his wife was giving birth. The woman he'd loved. The woman he'd trusted. The woman who'd destroyed everything. The woman who was still the mother of his child. Finally, he walked through the automatic doors into fluorescent brightness and antiseptic smell. A social worker met him, Patricia, the same one who'd been handling Jay's case. She's asking for you, Patricia said carefully. You don't have to see her. But she keeps calling your name. David followed her down sterile hallways to a delivery room that looked like all the others except for one detail. Corrections officer stationed outside the door. Through the window he could see his wife. Pale, sweating, wrist cuffed to the bed rail even as she labored. Her eyes met his through the glass. Desperate, pleading, full of pain that wasn't just physical. Please, she mouthed. Please. David looked away. I can't be in there with her. Patricia nodded. We'll call you when the baby's born. 2 hours and 43 minutes later, Patricia found him in the cafeteria staring at coffee he hadn't drunk. It's a girl, she said softly. 6 pounds 8 ounces. Healthy. A girl. A daughter. Patricia led him to the nursery window. Among rows of sleeping infants, a nurse held up a tiny bundle wrapped in pink. Dark hair. Perfect fingers that curled and uncurled. His daughter. Have you thought about a name? They'd chosen names together months ago, back when the world made sense. Emma for a girl. But David couldn't use that name, it belonged to a life that no longer existed. Hope, he heard himself say. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. That's beautiful. It's a prayer, David said quietly, that she'll have a better story than the one she was born into. They let him hold her before his wife was transferred back. Hope was impossibly light in his arms, making small sounds of existence, eyes closed against the harsh lights. I'm your dad, David whispered. And I promise, I'll see the things I should see. I'll protect you from monsters even when they look like family. Especially then. A nurse appeared. Your wife is asking to see the baby. She has the right to. No. David's voice was firm. She signed away visitation rights in the custody agreement. Actually, she's requesting one supervised visit. As the biological mother, she's entitled. I said no. But Patricia touched his arm. David, let her say goodbye. For the baby's sake. One day your daughter will ask about her mother. Let there be one good memory. One moment of love before everything else. Against every instinct screaming at him to refuse, David found himself walking toward his wife's room. The corrections officer stepped aside. He entered with Hope in his arms and Patricia right behind him. His wife was sitting up in bed, still cuffed, hospital gown rumpled. When she saw the baby, her face crumpled. She's beautiful, she whispered. Can I hold her? David looked at Patricia, who nodded. An officer unlocked one cuff, the one attached to the bed rail, but kept her other wrist secured. David placed Hope in his wife's arms and something shifted in the room. For just a moment she looked like the woman he'd married. Soft, vulnerable, genuinely maternal as she gazed down at their daughter. Hope, she said, testing the name. Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama. Tears streamed down her face, dripping onto the pink blanket. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you're coming into this mess. You deserve better than me. David watched, throat tight, as his wife pressed her lips to Hope's forehead. A gentle kiss. A benediction. A goodbye. I want you to know something, his wife said, looking up at David. I do love you. Both of you. I know you don't believe that. I know what I did makes love seem impossible. But it's true. Love doesn't look like what you did to Jay, David said quietly. I know. Fresh tears fell. I know that now. The therapy here, they're helping me see. What happened to me wasn't love. And what I did to him wasn't love. It was sickness pretending to be love. It was damage spreading like infection. She looked back at Hope. But this? Right now? This is real. This is the only pure thing I've ever felt. And I'm giving it to you, David. I'm letting her go because that's what real love does. It protects, even when protection means absence. Wait, is she manipulating him one last time, or is this genuine? Can abusers actually change, or is this just another performance? Drop your opinion in the comments. And if you're not subscribed, do it now. The trial verdict is coming and it's not what anyone expected. 5 minutes later, an officer took Hope back. David's wife watched her daughter leave, and something in her expression broke permanently. The trial starts in 2 weeks, she said dully. My attorney thinks we can get a reduced sentence if I plead guilty. Psychiatric treatment instead of prison. But David. She looked at him with hollow eyes. I don't want treatment. I want punishment. I want to pay for what I did. Why? Because Jay deserves justice. And because, she swallowed hard, because I'm terrified of who I am, what I'm capable of. If they let me out, if they fix me and send me back into the world, what's to stop me from doing it again? To Hope when she turns 11. To some other child. David had no answer. Promise me something, his wife said. Promise you'll never let me near her unsupervised. Even if I'm released. Even if I seem better. Even if she asks to see me. Promise. I promise. She nodded, lying back against the pillows. Thank you. For protecting her from me. That's what love looks like. The trial happened 3 weeks later. David attended every day, sitting in the back row, watching as his wife's entire life was dissected for public consumption. Margaret testified about the abuse cycle. Detective Morrison presented evidence of systematic grooming. Jay testified via video, small, broken, still insisting he didn't want his sister to go to prison. She took care of me, he said, crying. She's the only family I had. I know what happened was wrong, but she didn't mean to hurt me. She was trying to show love the only way she knew how. The jury's faces were unreadable. David's wife took the stand on day 7. Her attorney had advised against it, but she'd insisted. I'm guilty, she said simply, of everything they're accusing me of. I groomed my brother. I abused him. I convinced him it was love when it was violence. And I did it knowing it was wrong because the same thing happened to me and I knew how it felt. The prosecutor leaned forward. If you knew it was wrong, why did you do it? David's wife was quiet for a long moment. Because damaged people damage people. Because I was so broken that breaking someone else felt like the only way to feel whole. Because I wanted someone to understand my pain, and the only way I knew to create that understanding was to inflict the same pain. So you chose to abuse your brother. Yes, I chose it. Every time. And I need you to understand, I didn't think I was choosing abuse. In my mind, I was choosing connection. Intimacy. Love. My father convinced me that's what those things looked like, and I never unlearned that lesson. Are you asking for sympathy? No. I'm asking for accountability. Prison. Real consequences. Because if you give me treatment and release me, I'll do it again. Maybe not consciously. Maybe not immediately. But the sickness is too deep. Some things can't be fixed. The courtroom erupted. Judge Summers banged her gavel. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood with the verdict sheet trembling in her hands. On all counts of child sexual abuse, we find the defendant guilty. David's wife didn't react. Just sat there, expressionless, as the judge announced sentencing would occur in 2 weeks. Sentencing day arrived. David brought Hope in a carrier, 3 months old now, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the gravity of this moment. Judge Summers looked at David's wife with something that might have been pity. You've pleaded for harsh punishment. Your attorney has argued for psychiatric treatment. I'm going to give you both. 20 years in a psychiatric correctional facility. You'll receive treatment for your trauma and your paraphilia. You'll be monitored constantly. You'll have no contact with minors, including your daughter, unless she chooses to seek you out after her 18th birthday. The gavel fell. David's wife turned to look at him one last time. At Hope sleeping in her carrier. And she mouthed 2 words. Thank you. 6 months later, David stood in a therapist's office holding Hope, now crawling and babbling. The therapist, Dr. Sarah Williams, specialized in trauma and family dynamics. How's Jay doing? David asked. Better. Slowly. He's in a good foster home. Starting to understand that what happened wasn't his fault. Dr. Williams paused. He asked about you recently. Wants to know if you hate him. David's throat tightened. Can I see him? Maybe. In time. When he's ready. David looked down at Hope, who was grabbing at his face with tiny hands, smiling with pure, uncomplicated joy. Will she be okay? He asked. Growing up knowing her mother is in prison for what she did? That depends on you. On the story you tell her. On the love you show her. On whether you let fear and trauma define your parenting, or whether you choose something different. I choose different, David said firmly. Dr. Williams smiled. Then yes, she'll be okay. You both will. Years later, a journalist would ask David if he ever forgave his wife. Forgiveness isn't the right word, he'd say, watching Hope, now 7, Play in the backyard. Understanding maybe. I understand how trauma creates monsters. How abuse echoes through generations. How broken people break people. But does understanding mean excusing? No. She made choices. She knew right from wrong and chose wrong anyway. That's on her. Do you ever regret calling the police? David would look at his daughter, happy, safe, surrounded by love that looked like actual love, and shake his head. I regret not calling sooner. I regret all the red flags I ignored. But calling when I did? That saved 2 lives. Jay's and Hope's. What would you say to other people who suspect abuse in their families? That comfort is a trap. That denial is complicity. That the scariest thing you can do, opening that door, making that call, destroying that perfect picture, is also the most necessary thing. Because behind every perfect picture, sometimes hides a nightmare. And someone has to be brave enough to turn on the lights. This case teaches us that monsters aren't always strangers in dark alleys. Sometimes they're the people we trust most. Sometimes they're victims who became victimizers. Sometimes they're sitting across from us at dinner, hiding in plain sight. If this story affected you, hit that like button. Drop a comment sharing your thoughts. I read every single one. Subscribe for more true crime stories that dive deep into the psychology of human darkness. And remember, if you see something, say something. Your courage could save a life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next case.